I think we have to go to COVID now. I believe me, we've talked about COVID a bunch of times at this point, but it is important because it is now on an all-time high in most of the states that we know, and I believe that there are 28 states that have red alerts basically for their state. So I think that talking about vaccine reception by the people is really important. Just to quick, I know that Richard actually has a lot to say about this.
Yeah.
But both vaccine shots, let's see, yeah, okay. Both vaccine shots, one by Pfizer and BioNTech, the other by Moderna and the National Institute of Health, are mRNA vaccines, a brand new technology. U.S. regulators are set to decide this month whether to allow emergency use, paving the way for ration shots that will start with health workers and nursing home residents. The groundwork was laid in large part by two different streams of research, one at the NIH and the other at the University of Pennsylvania. And because scientists had learned a bit from other about coronavirus from prior SARS and MERS outbreaks. So I'm going to throw this to Richard because I believe you had a lot to say about the mRNA research.
Yeah. So, as far as the vaccine is concerned, what I really kind of felt was partially my responsibility to do was to kind of do a deep dive into this and kind of take a look at what this vaccine is, how it was developed. I just want to say I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. All I am is just an interested citizen, is interested in this topic as I'm sure everyone else is, and I've done some research and I've done some reading, and so all I really kind of want to do is discuss that just as a lay person. So just to get that out of the way. So basically, there I've seen and heard a lot of growing anxiety about the vaccine and about the speed with which it was created, and about its qualities and its properties and side effects and all these types of things. And so what I wanted to do was kind of read a few articles, and I shared another PBS article. I don't know if anyone looked at it, but it's fine if you didn't. But I just wanted to share some of that information and kind of try to clear up what are legitimate issues and what aren't legitimate issues when it comes to the vaccine. Yeah.
I just want to, is this the PBS article that you attached, Ant? Or is this because I have a PBS article?
It should be, yes. Yes, it should be.
Right. Just want to make sure,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this is one of them, and I have it here in front of me as well. I'm not going to read from the article, but it's an informative article, and basically the thrust of this piece is to kind of lay out the map for the groundwork of what an mRNA vaccine is, how it's been developed, the time frame over which it's been developed, and how it differs from the standard vaccines that we have. All right. So when we talk about an mRNA vaccine, right, and I'm just gonna so the M stands for messenger, RNA is ribonucleic acid. You've got DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. That's as technical as I'm going to get. We all know RNA, we know DNA, we know these are the fundamental kind of genetic building blocks, all right? So this particular vaccine, this type of vaccine, they started engineering that, they being the medical and pharmaceutical global community, started engineering this back in '03. And this was originally supposed to be in response to the SARS outbreak. And financing dried up for it. In the past, there have been some technical challenges with mRNA vaccines. Not that there were any side effects or they were dangerous in any way, but in the past, they hadn't been as effective as traditional vaccines because there was a problem with the carrier component. the RNA dies very quickly. It has a very, very short kind of half-life when you try to use it in purposes, other than the natural purposes that in which it functions. So they had to find a carrier, like a binder or something to stabilize it. And so the pharmaceutical community and the people who did this research basically used fat balls, molecules of fat. Basically, they call them little, kind of bubbles. And that is the carrier, that's the vehicle for these RNA vaccines. So this is a modified pre-existing technology. All right, this is so just to kind of, dispel the kind of framework or the myth that this is something that was done in 6 months or 7 months. Yeah, it has been refit and retooled and repurposed for COVID-19, but the actual foundation of it and the type of vaccine has been in development for nearly 2 decades. And so the difference, just briefly, between this vaccine, where it's safer than previous vaccines and where there is an element of question as opposed to previous vaccines. First, an mRNA vaccine, it's not a traditional vaccine in that it doesn't use a sample of the pathogen. Okay, it's not based on administering a minimized or inert or altered version of the pathogen that you're trying to suspend, that you're trying to combat. Okay, so it's like you get the polio vaccines. I think this is one of the vaccines that we have a great deal of data on because it's a relatively pretty old vaccine. And then you get some version of polio, but you build up antibodies and you become immune, and that's you're better off. You become immune to the disease. This style of vaccine is a new style of vaccine, even though it hasn't just been created, but it works differently. What it does is it creates a protein, and the protein that it creates allows the body's natural immune system, or the body's natural defense system. The protein incites the body's immune system and defense system into attacking the pathogen. So you're using the body's immune system to greater effect by introducing the protein, whereas in the past, you were just giving them some form of the virus itself and letting the body work around it in that way. Now, the flip side, the drawback to this, if there is a drawback, is that this is, relatively speaking, even though it's certainly not 6 months old or 10 months old, it is, relatively speaking, new biotechnology. It's a new way of approaching vaccines. It's not just a new vaccine for this specific disease, for this specific virus. It's a new way of approaching vaccination totally. And therefore, we don't have 50 years of data on it. We don't have 30 years of science on it. We don't have a 20 or 25-year medical history of observing people that have taken this vaccine, seeing what their side effects are, seeing how it affects them, seeing what it does, seeing what it doesn't do. We don't. Most of the writers of the articles and the communications that I've read in the medical community seems to be that community seems to be more concerned about the long-term possible effects of COVID than they are of the long-term possible effects of this vaccine. So any doctor will tell you, do we have a 20-year case study on this? Can we vouch 100% that 5 or 8 or 10 years down the road, there won't be some unintended thing that happens from this that we can't foresee? No, we can't say that with any certainty. And anybody who would say that is lying to you, because it's a new thing that's being introduced. That being said, it is built on a foundational bedrock of science that is sound and that has been researched. So the question becomes, I would like people to kind of move away in their thinking from, how did they get it done so fast? Did Trump do it? Is it a conspiracy? Is it political? Is it for the election? Is it this? Is it that? And I would like them to embrace this medical technology in the same way you would or wouldn't embrace any new medical technology. It's a different thing. It's a step forward. But many people believe it's an innovation, and it's one that's going to save a lot of lives. So yeah, with any medical procedure, there's risks and there's benefits. And so I just want people to focus on the reality of those risks and those benefits, rather than taking those risks into a place that's just really more internet meme type stuff and less actual science. So that's just my piece on the vaccine.
And actually, what's really relevant is that we have right after this we have Leticia Wright, who is a Black Panther fame, basically. She got embroiled in a controversy because she put up a video for about 90 minutes, I believe it was, of her being anti this vaccine, and so there's some other things, some transphobia in there as well. But she got embroiled in a huge conversation, and I wish we still had the video. She deleted it all. This is the thing. This is the internet. Though things disappear, I could go find those clips if I want to. I think it's more interesting to hear Vanity Fair's video on this.
YouTube video disputing the legitimacy of the coronavirus treatment and vaccines in general. Variety noted that the controversial content also contained climate change skepticism and transphobic comments. Following initial criticism and anti-vaxxer accusations, Wright tweeted, "If you don't conform to popular opinions, but ask questions and think for yourself, you get canceled." As the outrage continued, the 27-year-old actress doubled down on her point of view and argued, "You have every right to ask questions about what goes into your body, and ask questions until you feel you are ready."
So what's insane is that she's just an actor. She shouldn't be giving up any advice at all on this. And I understand that she wanted to have a conversation about it, but it's clear that she's probably less affected by this than the other people who are just like her, who are Black and Latino in certain areas, who are being hit by these COVID numbers by an unfounded rate, So I just wanted to expose another, and not even expose. It's just there is an interesting culture that I know is happening in Black communities where they don't believe in vaccines first. There's a fear from the Tuskegee experiment. There's just from any past expedition into medical research. They're worried about it, and I think it's scary. But it's important for me to enlighten people, us to enlighten people, that it's an effective vaccine. You already said all the things about the pathogens and it actually being attached to the protein. So I don't have any of the. I'm not going to talk back and requote that, but I don't even know. You don't even have to feel any way about this, but it's more like this is our cooldown sometimes, and you just need to hear like how ridiculous people are. She said her intentions were not to hurt anyone. Her only intention on posting the video was to raise her concerns that the vaccine contains, of what the vaccine contains, and what we are putting in our bodies. It's a legitimate thing to say, but at the same time, it is not legitimate to go put out a video where you're discounting science just because I don't think she was looking for clicks either. I think that this is a true believer of, well, you got to be really worried about what the government is going to do to you. And I think that is something that we need to fight right now, is that the government can be bad to us, but the government isn't the end all be all. There are people involved with it, and they mostly want what's best for most people. Not always. If you're talking about money, that's a whole different story. But when you're talking about health, most people want the best outcome.
I want to make sure
Well,
everything
yeah, I
gets shut
mean,
down. But, sorry.
no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk. So yeah, I mean, I think that it's important to acknowledge that on some level, any time you seek medical treatment, there is a calculated risk. You can go under anesthesia and you can die. Okay, you can die if you have an issue with your heart and you need a valve replacement. You can quite very possibly die in an effort to fix your heart and replace your valve. The question is, at what point do you feel that the risks have been accounted for and are calculated enough that there's a risk benefit ratio that is favorable to you? And so I mean, I think that yes, I agree with one thing that was said in that clip. I do agree that everybody should ask questions and get information when it comes to their own health and when it comes to being advocates for their own health. I think there's nothing wrong with that, but really gather information from credible sources and people that are in a position to know. In other words, just kind of vague, these kind of nebulous ideas that, vaccines are created in some kind of like government-funded dark fortress or something. I mean, these vaccines were created in tandem with biotech companies in Germany, and all different kinds of entities participated in this, over the last 2 decades. And so I mean, I have absolutely no problem with people having questions and seeking information and not necessarily taking a public health policy at face value without learning about it. But I think that there's a difference between acquiring knowledge and perspective and learning and just being, fundamentally vaguely skeptical because of a some kind of personal experience or viewpoint that doesn't translate outside of yourself. Or oneself, you know what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm at. I think at this point, for anyone with any platform to run around saying blanketly without any qualification, the vaccine's dangerous, it's going to hurt you, it's going to kill you. To me, I think that's irresponsible. I think that's grossly irresponsible. If you want to talk about legitimate concerns, well, let's talk about it. And the medical profession will talk about it too. But that's kind of where I'm at on that. Is I think when it comes to issues of public health, if we didn't really want to take the vaccine, we would do what they did in New Zealand. We would do what they did in Belgium, places like this, where we would shut down, we would wear our masks, we would have a policy in place where people wouldn't have to go out to work. We'd all isolate, we'd flatten that curve. We've made it very clear as a population that we're not trying to do that. We've made it very clear that there is a segment of the population, a large segment of the population, that isn't going to wear a mask, that isn't going to socially distance, that is still going to go out and have that beer at that pub, or go out to that restaurant, or gather for Thanksgiving. And in the face of that, you got to kind of be vaccine friendly. It's tough to place both sides of the field. I'm done. I don't want to ramble on.
What do you think is triggering a lot of that? You think it's I know part of it's the trust issues that over the years have just been trashed. You know what I mean? Over the years, a lot of people wanted to believe in government, and they feel all this stuff about pharmaceuticals robbing us, and all this other stuff that just keeps, it became huge over time where people started losing trust. I think that's part of it. But also there's a degree of selfishness, and I don't know. I don't know what people are thinking, if they really care about their family and friends. And I also think part of it is is a lot of people aren't actually seeing what's happening. Like the percentages are so low, you know, compared to the population, that people think that it's insignificant. They're like, oh, it's only like a 1% chance that blah 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 blah. Other than that, it's just going to be you know, cold or something, and it's, I don't know what it is that these people want to compare it to like a regular flu or whatever it is. When you look at the amount of people that have died in the last, let's say, almost a year now, it's ridiculous that people can even try to compare. They said like in a year, what is it, like 60,000 people die with the regular flu, right? It's like close to 60,000 or something like that. I know it's not
Well,
anywhere
usually
near.
they die of complications from the flu, which is
Yeah,
pneumonia.
yeah, you know, and at the end of the day, it's like I just feel like it's like you said, it's very irresponsible. It's very selfish that you're gonna do what you're doing, and you're not taking into consideration anybody that's on the front lines, and you're not taking into consideration the elderly, people that are sick, or anything else, because you want to go do you. You know what I mean? I want to go out and have my beer, and I want to go out and party, and I want, like, I saw a couple of videos on Facebook of people going to parties, and you know, people's like, you know, birthday parties, and I'm like, yo, are you crazy, man? That place is packed. I don't even know how they're even putting that stuff on. I mean, I'm not gonna be a snitch, because what's done is already done. God forbid anything happens to these people. But I see
But you
videos
got to
of
stay
people.
away.
Yeah, it's like I look at them like, okay, I'm not hanging out with you for a 12, like a good 2 3 weeks or whatever it is, because I saw what you were doing, and like, you know, a lot of these people that I saw on these videos were against you know, a lot of the stuff that's going on. You know, they believe in protecting themselves and whatever. And then I see them out there partying, and I'm like, it's very, you know, they're contradicting themselves. It's ridiculous, and it's very selfish. I want this over just as much as anybody else does. You know, either quarantine yourself, not quarantine, but isolate yourself, or take the damn vaccine, or just stay away from people. Do something, man. Like, I don't know what to tell them, but it's
I want to.
crazy, man.
I can express the real numbers for you, since so the deaths in 2019 for the flu was 32,400. There are
Wow.
286,000 deaths in COVID for this year.
Wow.
We're not even talking. It's like apples and oranges we're talking about, and like it's so ridiculous that you have. I understand her Leticia Wright's position, even though I disagree with it wholeheartedly. I know what her fear is, and it's a lot of fear. But it's when you look at the numbers, it just tells you the facts, and I hate to harp on it, but science is the only way to look at this.
Yeah, and
Do
there's
you have
also
something to say,
something.
Richard?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, I mean, and there's also something I think that's significant with this. First of all, when they talk about a 2% mortality rate, that sounds benign until you realize that's 6 million people in the
Yes.
United States. And so that's you know the that's the extrapolation of this. Okay, that's if left unchecked, and if spikes, you know, maintained, and if public safety and public health is not met or addressed in any way, that's the path of this. Okay, it can kill up to 2%. So if everybody gets this thing tomorrow, if we just said, forget about it, we're just going to do herd immunity, we're not going to wear masks, we're going to let this thing circulate, and we're going to let it die out on its own, that's 2%. When we talk about the 280,000, I'm sorry, what was the exact number that you gave, Anthony?
36,200.
No, the
Or
one of
do
the
you mean
COVID.
for the COVID death?
Yeah.
236,000.
236. Was it
I thought you said
236?
280. I thought it was 86.
No, it's 236. I can double check that, of course. That's easy to do.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
It's
I didn't mean
important
to
to get the
call you back, but I forgot it.
I keep hearing different. Like, that's another thing that people see the numbers
The
changing
number keeps
all over.
moving.
But the thing is like sometimes it sounds like it's higher than other times and then lower than other times. So it's like it's. You know,
Okay,
I thought it was
so
280
yeah.
something. But go ahead.
It's 286. You're correct.
286.
Okay, 286. Okay, so all right, so fine. And the only reason why I asked that is because you've got this 286,000 number of mortality rate of the death toll. Okay, but that doesn't take into account people that were in the hospital for a month. That doesn't take into account people that were on a ventilator for a month and they've lost 20% of their muscle mass and they're in they're alive. They've gotten past COVID, but they're a wreck. They're not in great shape. So that doesn't take into account the people that, COVID didn't wind up killing them, but it put them in desperate straits health-wise and made them very, very ill. So it's, when you look at it through that lens, I think, it becomes a different thing. You've got this huge death toll for a year, but you've also got a lot of people that were driven into the hospital and were treated within an inch of their lives. And so I think that just to have that perspective and to understand that, you may get through this thing, but you may get through it at a significant cost. I mean, a physical cost through treatment. And I think that kind of is something that needs to be kind of just factored into the whole discussion.
I was going to anecdotally say that, I have somebody who took the vaccine early. Okay, so it's a double-blind test, so she doesn't know that she got it, but at this point, she's pretty sure. She works for a pharmaceutical. She's a pharmaceutical agent, basically. So she does it all the time. She's out there and delivering medicine to people all the time. So she went up and she got it, and she's totally fine. And I'm like, I know this is anecdotal evidence. This is just one person, but this person is in contact with a lot of people, and she's in Tennessee, so she's dealing with a lot of people who are not wearing masks, and she rails about it all the time. She's extremely knowledgeable about all of this, so she knows what she wants, but that you can't just persuade people to change their opinions. Now it's an opinion, even though it should be a scientific fact that masks work. For them, it's an opinion.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I was gonna say
no, go ahead.
If somebody were to take the vaccine out of curiosity, because I haven't researched much, because I told myself I'm gonna wait several months to see what happens, but that's just me. I'm gonna definitely isolate myself and wear masks and so on and so forth. But I eventually will take the vaccine. My question is, okay, you take the vaccine. What happens if you come in contact with somebody? Do you just get less symptoms, or is what's supposedly the effect of being in contact with somebody that does have it after taking the vaccine? What's supposed to happen, to that person? If I were to take the vaccine and my best friend had COVID, how would it affect me? I know they don't have all the details, but would I still get sick, but just not as severely, or is like any other vaccine would? Or what? I don't know much of the details.
That's a detail that I don't. Maybe Richard, you know a little bit more about that. Yes.
Well, I mean, so the way I understand it is, it's a two-series shot. It's got a booster. And so the way I understand it is, you take the first shot, and the immunity is supposed to begin to develop, and it's supposed to get you to around 50-50. And then the second shot is supposed to get you to the point where you have immunity, you have antibodies to the virus. So, as I call it. So I think that the idea is that if you fall into the 95% test group, control group, where the vaccine is effective, I think the idea is that you're no longer susceptible to the virus if you're within that 95% window. There's a 5% group where this it will not be. I don't know whether that means that 5%. It's not, if it's not effective for that 5% at all, or if it's less effective. I don't know exactly what that number means. But I know that the numbers that they've been kicking around for both of the vaccines, both the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine, has been 95% efficacy. And I think that means that once you've gone over the month or 6-week process of getting the initial shot, getting the booster, and allowing that it to all kind of build in your system, I believe it means that you're no longer vulnerable to the virus, assuming you're in that 95%.
And I think the only thing that they don't know is that they don't know if you can still pass it along. They just that as you won't get sick. But that's the only question that they still have, and that's something that you need evidence. You don't have evidence yet.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that the idea, and like I said, I mean, I hesitate on speaking with complete certitude with this because I'm not a scientist. I know what I've read, and I think my sources are solid, but I don't claim to know every fine nuance of this. But I do believe that as long as you're kind of in that large majority for which this vaccine has been effective, the transmission rates are supposed to be, go down to, almost nothing. That being said, if you wear a mask and you cover your mouth and your nose, and another person wears a mask and they cover their mouth and their nose, and you practice 6-foot social distancing and you don't gather inside, those transmission rates go down to about 1.5% too. So I mean, it's you know what I'm saying? So I mean, it's all a question of, what are you willing to do? What are you willing to maintain? But I definitely have, me personally, I put more faith in a vaccine's ability to mitigate the spread of a virus than I do in the ability of human habits and human compliance to mitigate the spread of a virus. So that's where I'm at with that.
I'm with you.
No,
Definitely with you. Human nature is proven to me that they're kind of stupid. Like majority, we got a good percentage of people. I'm hearing like an echo, I think, whatever. But was I gonna say the human nature is definitely very suspect. I think we're relatively educated enough. I think we were born in a time and in an area where we kind of learned certain things and realized that you have responsibilities on this planet and our families and other regarding other people. Some people that I feel like the isolation that some people have kind of gives them a reason to think that they could do whatever the hell they want. The people that then again, there are also people that feel privileged and so on. It's impinging on my livelihood and my lifestyle and so on and so forth. But it's, to me, I think it's how you were brought up and the type of people you're around that make you realize or allow you to realize that you have more to do on this earth and have more responsibilities in regards to your actions. And so a lot of people just never had that. I've realized every day when I'm walking in the streets and I see how people, or if I go to a store, for instance, like Walmart, people, I don't know, the entitlement and the way that they were raised, it's sickening. I don't know, man.
I'm going to throw in that I don't know if it's just how you're raised. I think that capitalism causes, especially corporatism, is like I like to say that it's like the large form capitalism, like your Walmarts, your Home Depots. It gives you this sense of security, and that sense of security isn't real, but it is something that is American. It's a very American thing to be like, I can do whatever I need to do because it's my freedom. And I mean, that's kind of what our last little cool down clip is about. But I also want to make sure that you. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say what I was saying about raised. I meant more like in a sense of how parents interacted with the children. There are a lot of parents that don't, tell people, "Oh, behave yourself," or da da da. Some people get physical before they actually explain why you should be acting a certain way. And they don't really learn the lesson. They might get smacked in the back of the head or beaten or whatever it is by their parents. They really don't understand it. And then there's also the whole environment of just education in general. Education also teaches you responsibility. The schools that I've went to in the past, I wasn't the best student all the time, but I felt like there were certain people in my life that allowed me to, see the difference between right and wrong. I live in Newark now. It's a huge difference on how these kids act from when I grew up in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. You know what I mean? There's a big difference. And I grew up in a time where it was still developing. They were gentrifying my mother's neighborhood when I was a kid. Like I said, I'm 44, so that was years and years ago. You know what I mean? And as it got better and better, like if you see it now compared to like 30 years ago, you're like, wow, it's a big difference. But I felt like the teachers and the environment kind of instilled some sort of common sense in people. And a lot of places, I feel education and the lack of proper parenting, which isn't necessarily the parents' fault. Sometimes they got to work 3, 4 jobs. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but to raise that child,
I mean, nobody really should be working 2 jobs. So,
yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, that's,
But
we're
you
talking.
understand my point. It's like, how do you teach a kid? Like my son's lucky; he's on honor roll. He's got a lot of. He was born in a tribe. We live in a 3-floor house with his grandmother before she passed, the grandfather, the 2 sisters of his mother, myself, and just my family, in New York. So in general, he had a lot of attention given to him to help him go on a path, and we wanted him to develop into a person that knew they had to adapt to situations. My son doesn't want to tell me when he's having trouble in school learning something. He's like, I wanted to learn how to do this because I know I have to be self-sufficient. And to me, that's an honorable thing. It doesn't necessarily help him if he needs help. You know what I mean? But, I'm happy to see that he at least acknowledges that and knows that. And not too many kids nowadays, I'm a smart person. I might not be able to speak well sometimes. I might not get the words out my mouth perfectly. But I know that I'm tech savvy. I know that I'm relatively a creative person when I can be, when I have the time to dedicate things. And I know how to adapt to situations. I don't let situations stop me. Like today, I'm exhausted. I had like 3 hours of sleep. I went to sleep at like 6 in the morning. I had to wake up early in the morning to go do other things. And I still came to do the show with you guys because I know it has to be done. We have to, in order to make a change, we have to do things. A lot of people don't get that. A lot of people don't understand the responsibility of that. When it comes to this virus, they're like, "Oh, this is just a virus. It's a cold. This is not important to me. I don't care." I see people. Teresa's friend goes to hookah lounges and stuff. He went away to I think Puerto Rico and was at hookah lounges, and I'm like, "You're inhaling things with other people.
You're
What?
sharing it. Yeah, you're
Yo," I'm
sharing
like, "Are
nothing
you
with
out of your effing mind?" I'm like, "Yo." But that's the mentality. I don't want to stop what I'm doing. This is my life. One day I'll die. I only live life once. Okay, you're shortening your lifespan, taking that chance. You might live, but you might kill your grandmother, or your grandparents, or whatever, or your cousins, or your uncles, or your child. What if your child has an illness and you bring it back home to your child? I'm like, you're crazy. I'm sorry. I could deal with it. This isn't prison. It's not like I'm forced into this. I'm choosing to do this. A lot of people feel like we've heard it in other things that we were talking about before. How people compare this to slavery and jail and all that other stuff. And I'm like, are you out of your mind? Like, there's a lot worse conditions in there, and those people are suffering from COVID too right now. So I'm like, what the hell are you talking about?
It could be worse. You could have COVID in actual jail. Yeah. So.
Exactly. You could be in jail, right? And then,
Jeez, yeah. I mean that's a whole discussion. I've held back that discussion because I wanted to be with criminal justice reform. If we talk like how have a whole session about criminal justice reform, COVID-19 is killing prisoners by the thousands at this point, and it's a petri dish. I mean, it's made to be a petri dish because we don't have sustainable criminal rights like laws for these people. They don't care how our prisoners are kept. They would love to give them, jobs at a very low rate so that they can serve the people somehow. But at the same time, you're never going to be, honored again when you get out of the prison. And that's kind of like when you were talking about reforming the police, that's a huge thing too, because it's reforming the whole justice system and how we treat prisoners and all of that. Unfortunately, we might need to release more people from prison just
not
to
in my backyard. That's
help
what
with
people
COVID.
think, right? They're like, not in my backyard.
Exactly.
Keep them there. Keep them there. I don't know. Like, that's the mentality people have. But if it was their child, they'd be like, oh, please take them out. Please, we don't want them to get sick and die in there. It's like they don't understand because a lot of people don't. Like, I've had, when I did Uber driving, they don't understand, like, what other people go through in different walks of life. Lack of education, lack of proper housing, in different environments. We could like go for days with different topics in regards to how unjust that things are for people. How people don't have like the proper living conditions. And then when it comes to prisons, oh, we don't want them back here. The whole conservative mindset is law and order. We don't want those people going to. We'll keep the suburban wives safe. Like that was one of their talking points. I'm like, what? I'm like, but what? Like, there's people that were born in quote unquote suburban areas that went to jail too. Don't act like people don't. I don't know, man. It's there's so many.
It's hard. We're talking about
angles.
compassion too.
Yeah.
We're talking about compassion at the same time, and it's very difficult because our system is not made to be a compassionate system.
But it's not just a system; it's the public. Like the way they've made people in the public, it's like we literally have 50% of the country that I feel has no compassion to certain things. That they whatever they feel is right is what it is, but they don't want to see outside of that box or that bubble that they're in, and it's scary because you still got to live with these people. Like, you want to make these people's lives miserable. What's it gonna do? There's a cause and effect for everything, right? Like, if you don't give people food, shelter, a decent job, or whatever it is, what do you think these people are gonna do? You don't want to give them that stuff, but you want things to be perfect for you. So what? You're gonna just put them in jail and let them die? That's the mentality. And most of these people are quote unquote religious people, and yet they're not willing to find better, more humane solutions to the problem, which could be a lot easier by giving them jobs, or helping them eat. I talked to you about the driving in Newark, that they fine people for giving people money in the streets. They find the homeless person, I think it's close to $500, and they find the drivers. I think I don't know if it was 50 or 100. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's ridiculous. You're gonna fine me for trying to help somebody that needs help, and then you're gonna find the person that needs help like 10 times as much money or whatever it is. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but the percentage.
Basically you're punishing the solicitor higher than you're punishing. It doesn't even matter. Nobody should be punished for it anyway.
No,
but
it's ridiculous.
It's punishing the solicitor.
It's ridiculous, man. And like I back in the days, I didn't care. I think a lot this society with technology, like we were talking about earlier, the patience of people and the fact that people want things instantaneously. They don't want to be bothered by things. They want this type of like bubble, but they want to be seen all over the place for whatever reason. It's like a reverse crazy thing. Like, everybody wants attention, but they don't want to have to deal with anything. You know what I mean? Like, kind of mentality. And then when it comes to other people, it's like they could care less about it. It's just, I don't know, man. It breaks my heart to think about what my son's future is going to be like if it keeps going in this direction. It really does.
I actually have a lot more faith in the youth than I think. I don't have faith in my own generation. I have a lot of faith.
What are they handing? What are they going to have? It's one thing.
I am not sure. That is
progressive mentalities. Like, I'm a progressive. I'm a democratic socialist. My beliefs. And at the end of the day, I know what everybody should have a level playing field. I think all three of us here are very similar, like-minded people in regards to what people deserve and what they should have, at least as a starting point. But they're not even allowing that now. They're not giving a stimulus. They're putting people that were in decent condition into the poverty class
cycle.
or whatever. Yeah, cycle or whatever So what is our children going to have? What are the opportunities? They're giving people automated jobs, jobs where less people are necessary. It's scary, man, and that's why I try to teach my son, for instance. Um, you have to adapt. You have to, like, if you see a problem, try to figure out a way around it. You know what I mean? A lot of people aren't taught that, and I think that's more of that old school mentality. I think the new school mentality sees the problem, but if you, excuse my language, if you hand them shit and you expect them to do something with that, you know what I mean? It's not going to. What are they going to do with it? They can't do anything with. You got to give them something so that they could build and create. And I feel like, yeah, the technology in some cases are there, but now everybody has it. So how do you get noticed? How do you do anything? It's I don't know, man. It's sort of like the world running out of water. You know, they got the water on the stock exchange now and everything else. Yeah, I know you've heard about that, right? The whole stock exchange thing with
Yes,
the water and
that's
everything.
actually on Sunday.
Yeah, so
We'll
well,
be talking about
we
that
will
on
talk about that, everybody. But you understand what I'm saying? It's like I feel like things are becoming depleted, and instead of people acknowledging it, like with the Green New Deal and all this other stuff, they're like, "Oh no, that's too expensive, dude. You're not giving people money. You're giving corporations money. What are they gonna do with it? These people are sitting on their asses, doing absolutely nothing but counting their money. They're not gonna build the roads. They're not gonna help the environment. They're not gonna do any of the things that are necessary. The youth sees what it needs, but if nobody's giving them the tools and the resources to do it, it's like it's a mute point. You know what I mean? Like it's a scary thought in my mind, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. How do you guys feel? I'm sorry if I'm bringing like some negative stuff.
No, I'm just want to hear. I just want to hear what Richard feels. I feel less complicated about it because I don't have children, so
Yeah.
it's more like I'm working for myself in a way, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't like to. I would love to hear what Richard has, what his thoughts are.
Well, I mean, I don't have children either, so we're in the same boat
Yeah.
on that. I mean, as I'm concerned, it's the components of kind of a functional society are in place. The question is, what are they going to look like? So, in other words, if you have an education system, we have an education system in place. What is that education system going to look like? We're going to have to manufacture, I think, at some point in this country again. I think somewhere along the line, we got the idea that it wasn't great to work in a factory, that somehow there was some kind of qualification on labor, that if you were charged with maintenance or production or anything that you do with your hands or any kind of work in this way, that there was somehow a myth perpetuated that it was less than whatever the efforts were of a person that went to an office and sat in a desk and did work that was removed from that physical environment. And to me, I think that that's a myth that's time has come and gone. I think that eventually we're going to have some kind of a production and manufacturing apparatus back in the country. What is that going to look like? Hopefully it's going to be about making, solar panels and wind turbines and, great highly functional electric cars for $5,000. And, hopefully it's going to be technology driven. And driven by environmental consciousness and driven by progressive labor standards and policies. But the question that remains is, what are people going to do for a living? We can't have a society of only consumers, because eventually, you have nothing left to consume, or what you do consume becomes of a standard that it's either undesirable or unsafe. But B, there has to be an economic base from which to interact with commerce. So, it's great to, have a company that makes compact automobiles and is making hundreds of $billions in profit, but if nobody can afford to buy the product that you're producing, it becomes problematic. The same thing, with toxic assets, and as far as banking is concerned, it's all well and good to tell people, that you're not going to restructure their loan, that you're not going to work with them as a customer, that you're not going to engage in that process, and if you and repossess or foreclose on a house. But then you've also now got a house that nobody lives in, that's not producing any revenue for you as a corporate entity.
Yep.
And so what should that look like? Well, by the strict market, that bank, that financial entity should fail. That's by the strict, edicts of pure capitalism and of the market. So what did actually happen in 2008? Well, the banks got their money all ways possible, right? They took the assets, they seized the assets, then they got payment for the assets from the tax dollars of the same people that they foreclosed on and evicted from these assets. So I don't think that any of the basic infrastructure that we rely on as a society is going to crumble and go away. But what I do think is, I think that it needs to be adapted in a way that it takes a symbiosis into account. That there's government, and there's the market, and there's people, and these things have to coexist. And how are they going to coexist? So to me, I don't claim to have the answer for that question, but I think that one of the main issues that we have right now is that we have limited outlets for our labor force, and the labor force that we do have is exploited and undervalued. So there needs to be a balance between production and labor. And I think once we find that balance, I think the future will look a lot less scary. My thought on it.
I agree with 99% of that. The only problem I feel is the people running the show don't seem to have a clue what the hell to do with it. Like in regards to politicians, and we really need to hopefully, like I said, with the show and like other things that we do as individuals, we need to help push people in a direction, and other people, maybe community driven, to do exactly that, to get people in a position where they can actually make these changes. It's great to think that, and I agree with you, we do need manufacturing jobs because we shouldn't be outsourcing. They've done it for so many years. That's what's kind of screwed us up right now with this COVID stuff. We could have had a lot of this stuff if we weren't expecting it to come in from China or wherever else. But at the end of the day, even if we start the manufacturing jobs, like the fact that inflation or whatever it is, the fact that nobody has a living wage, we have to fix those problems. You give these people $10 an hour jobs, but if the cost of living goes up, it's not really going to amount to much. You know what I mean? Because they're not going to give you but so much for manufacturing in theory, especially if people can't consume. It's like they created a situation where there's a huge hole that we need to fill, and a lot of it has to deal with the people that are in charge. Like if Bernie, in my mind, if Bernie would have accomplished what he wanted to do, we could have been in a really good place. I don't think Biden is necessarily going to take us in that direction. I think he's going to give us some sanity back, but I think his mentality is very center right, and that's not really going to benefit the people that are struggling right now. I mean, I know it's going to help some of them, but a lot of people are going to fall through the cracks, and that's scary. I hope by 2024 we can have a big change in government, but it's going to take a lot. A lot of people that, I don't know. It's scary. I think that.
I mean, that's a complex argument about 2024, because 2024 could be a referendum on the people who are Trump supporters, actually. who are going to come out in a larger group, and we're not going to have a great candidate. But honestly, that's a long form discussion about about the
No, I know.
politics of the two party
I'm just
system.
saying in general, like in regards to what we've been talking about, I just feel like, that's where we have a huge dilemma, is that we don't have, it's like you want a professional handling what needs to be done. I feel like we have people that have their own agendas, or they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Like I said earlier with Mark Zuckerberg, asking him some stupid ass questions. Oh, why do you do this? And blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, dude, everybody's doing that now. That's old. Like the information thing was for information, getting your information. It wasn't just to inform you. It was because they wanted your information so they can make money off of you. But that's old. Like we've known that since AOL almost. If people can manipulate something then, they would have done it then. But now it's just easier. The technology is faster. They could scoop up things a lot quicker. They could do it in so many different fashions without you even knowing that it's happening. And those people are profiting. Those people that with that mentality, that mindset, the intelligence enough to do that, can do that. But in regards to what's the percentage of this country that's nowhere near that type of has that intelligence, or is just like we said, they're consumers, but they don't really think for themselves. You know what I mean? They want to take things. I love my iPhone. I love this. I love that. It allows me to do all this amazing things, and it's good for those that are creative and can adapt to situations. But what are the percentages of this country that are actually like that? And that's what scares me. I think that, like Rich said, and everybody says, well, actually, it was you, Anthony, that said it, but I'm sure Rich feels it too, and I feel it in some degree too. The youth has a huge potential if you give them the tools. I just feel like, you know, we got people that don't want to give them mine. I don't want you to have these tools, because if I give you the tools, you're gonna take what I have. That's the type of government I feel we're in right now. That they're penny wise and pound foolish. They're looking at situations in the wrong with the wrong lenses, and we're screwed from it because we got idiots that we elected. I mean, I wouldn't even say they're idiots. They have their own agendas. They're smart enough to know what they're doing, but they don't see the cause and effect of it. And I don't know.
Oh, go for it, because this is just a laugh now. Because it is some way you have to laugh at pain.
Okay.
We don't have the vibrational frequency to get COVID.
Do you know that everything in this universe is alive and is alive? There is life with that. That's what I'm talking about.
I don't put life into COVID. I'm not going to wear a mask.
I'm not going to wear a mask either.
I never wear a mask.
But we're not going to wear them.
Ever.
Yo, man.
Vibrational frequencies. That's where we're at. We're back at like an area of skepticism of science, to the point of not even religion. I would call this I don't even know what to call it. It's not even hippie culture anymore at that point, because it's just them believing in some kind of spiritual entity, which is Donald Trump, it seems to be, in their opinion, will save them from an obvious thing that doesn't have. A pandemic doesn't care about your feelings, doesn't care about where you are. It just wants to propagate. That's what a virus does. And there's an uneducated part of our society, and I don't know how we defeat that kind of. That's that's not an age group that I think I can reach even if I talk to them straight.
Yeah, that woman's probably raising other children to think just like her. That's what's scary about it. It's like, oh God help us. Like I have faith. I don't think it's gonna happen. Like, God forbid, unless the world blows up or something. But I don't think it's gonna happen immediately. But if we keep going this way, God forbid, man, like, oh God, I can't deal with these type of people.
I think they'll at least they'll disappear for a while. I don't know if forever. I remember the Tea Party.
They're still around.
I believe
man.
this is a subset of the Tea Party. This is a subset of the Tea Party, in my opinion. So, let's see what happens in 2 years. Unfortunately, this is like the long haul, like where you're gonna have to let these people go through their own mental loopholes of how Trump lost. Because sooner or later they're gonna have to accept it.
Yeah, but Trump TV is not going to let them. Yeah, that's what's scary about it. He's coming back with a vengeance. He's going to be spewing his propaganda. Oh God. Oh my God. And that's entertaining, and that's what they love. I don't get that, man. I don't get that. I for the last 4 years, I feel good. Don't get me wrong. This is this type of thing to know that in a couple of weeks he'll be gone. In theory, you know what I mean. But like those 4 years,
Richard, do you think he's gonna be gone? Do you think he'll finally get out of there?
I think as time progresses, I'm less and less worried about it. I think about 2 months ago, I was a heck of a lot more worried about whether or not, what the election was going to look like. But, as this record popular voting total came in, and as the electoral votes came in, and as his lawsuits have been dismissed now by the dozen, I'm feeling much better about the fact that he doesn't seem to have a foothold on a coup or any kind of government overthrow or anything like that. But yeah, it was dicey there for a while. There was a 2 or 3 month window there before the election where, yeah, it was definitely in question. I wasn't really sure how it was all going to play out, but I'm more and more comfortable that he's gonna. What
do you feel about after? How do you feel about after he's gone? Do you think he's gonna go and disappear like the dodo, or you think he's gonna come back with a vengeance? Like that's the thing I'm afraid of. Like this seems to be I don't know, kind of a scary thing. Like I think he's gonna utilize whatever BS that he's spewing now, and for the next 4 years say he was robbed, and I don't know. And
Well, no, man. No, I was just gonna say, I think he's gonna try to capitalize on any hustle that he can, and I think that for him, the presidency was a really good hustle. He's still making money off of it. He still, has people giving him money. So the question to me is not whether or not he's gonna hustle and run a sideshow and do his thing. I'm sure he will. The question is, where are we going to be as a country? And is his, rhetoric and all that he's trying to do going to gain any traction? And hopefully it's not. Hopefully he's, going to have less and less traction and less of an audience. And that's why it's incumbent upon the Biden administration to be as successful as it possibly can in real terms. Because I don't think that we do want to open up a window where, if he can collect tens of millions of dollars from his followers under the guise of I'm going to run for president again in 2024, he will. He'll collect that money and he'll use it for whatever he's going to use it for. So I have no doubt that as long as he still feels like he can get something monetarily out of this, that he's going to do it. The question is, are the American people going to care? And are they going to think of him as a viable option to be put back at the levels of power? Hopefully, the levers of power, I should say. Hopefully not.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's basically where I'm at it too.